I'm Dr. Jeff Kaplan, and for over 30 years I've traveled the globe from Dubai to Moscow and Johannesburg, from Singapore to Shanghai and Istanbul. I've studied the world's best businesses and the people that run them. But something is very different now. From the boardroom to the break room, there's a growing realization that our relationship with work is broken. But it's not too late. You still have a choice. Hold on to the past and struggle to survive, or join the willing, change, and thrive in the world of tomorrow that's already arrived. So if you're willing to think different, willing to work different, willing to change at the speed of now, then you're willing to win. Hello once again. Welcome to Willing to Win. I'm Jeff Kaplan.
And I'm Tara Thomas-Getman. Thanks to all of you for tuning in, however that happens, whether you see us on TV, listen to us on the radio, or check out the video versions of our podcast and so much more on our website. We're happy you are a part of what we call the Legion, joining us in this very detailed and elaborate but fun conversation about how the ways of working and our relationship with this big part of our life, work, is changing.
We're shaping the future.
We are. You know, George Plimpton, a name that some of the folks, the older generation, will recognize, is somebody I like to think of as a Renaissance man who was a real innovator when it comes to creating your own experience. Explain what that means.
Yeah, on the clip you saw, it was actually made into a movie starring Alan Alda. Many people remember him from MASH. The younger generation may or may not remember him from MASH, but he starred in this movie, and it was all about his experience as a reporter going to play for the Detroit Lions in their preseason to understand what it was like to be a football player. But he didn't quite have the full experience until he actually got in a preseason game and played as a player in the NFL. And of course, you saw the results.
Yes.
And you know what? George Plimpton is, amazing. I would have never thought when we first heard that, because that was always like a human interest story, right? It's something that they would do a spotlight on 60 Minutes because the person was so different than everybody else. But little did we know that might have been a blueprint for the future of the worker, right? Because we're seeing so much change. Now, when I grew up, my grandparents, were just finishing up their careers. And if they were really, really flighty, that generation, they may have had one or two, or don't tell the neighbors, 3 jobs in their careers. To move means that you weren't stable, right? You weren't somebody that could be counted on, right? Well, over time, that started to speed up. So for our generation, it was about six jobs in your career, right? That's a lot of movement in 40 years. Well, I gotta tell you, if you're graduating college today, they expect upwards of 12, 16 jobs in a career. There's gonna be a lot of movement, and that means we're gonna have to approach the entire mathematics of what a job and what a career is differently. We're gonna have to make it easier to hire. It's already easier to move, and we're gonna have to do it quickly because we're gonna constantly be competing, for talent. I wanna share a couple of things with you that just blow me away. When we were doing the research for the book, we have literally become, because of this, a nation of job seekers. Here's some stats that I want you to consider. More than half of the people in a recent survey, workers, have a plan to have a second job or a second income outside of their current job, right? And that's compared to only 36%, a year before. So it's up almost a third in 1 year. So people are starting to look at themselves as, industries, right? Rather than having, a single job, they may have multiple jobs, right? And a lot of people who have been independent contractors for years, that's the way they've done it. But we're talking about mainstream people working for mainstream, organizations. And let me give you another stat. 2/3 believe getting a job in 2021 will be more challenging than the year before. But I think that there's more to that stat because, as you know, it seems like every employer that I talk to is looking for talent.
True.
We can't open, we got shorter hours, we can't be, whatever it is, we don't have enough talent, right? So I think it's not that the jobs aren't there, that they're unwilling to accept certain things that they would accept before, because those jobs were filled before the pandemic, right? 64% of workers also believe the job seeking process is more stressful currently, especially for working parents. So once again, that stress, comes back in, and that whole idea of work-life balance is becoming super critical. 1/4 have changed industries in the last year.
That's amazing.
Now it's one thing to go, from McDonald's to Burger King, or from IBM to Microsoft or something like that. But it's another thing to change jobs entirely. And what we're finding out is, there's a death of permanence and there's a death of function. And that is, your function and your skill in what you do may get you in the door, but after that, it's all problem solving and interaction, with others. So the skills are in demand are changing, and that's amazing. And then finally, we were talking about this off air. Business Week this week has basically dubbed this period the Great Resignation.
Yes.
67%, of the people are considering, having a different job coming out of the pandemic. So, as an employer, if you ever wondered if your employees would leave you if they had a chance, the answer is yes. The answer
100%.
is yes. We're seeing that every day. So it's not much wonder that people all over the world are creatively creating new lifestyles and new careers.
Yeah, I think it's sounding the alarm to employers that you can't take people for granted, right? Like you described, the traditional past generational approach of, I don't want to leave, I'm afraid of the unknown. We've sort of flipped the script on that, and the pandemic really accelerated that. It sort of put through water on the fire of that fear burning inside us, because now I think we have the confidence, because for many people it was the first time they experienced how things could be different, especially when you talk about remote or hybrid work. And because of this huge shift now for so many going into that remote workspace, it truly means that bricks and mortar report to the office is really it's disappearing for many individuals, especially in careers where they have that mobility via their device. They can do their work from anywhere. And we now affectionately call those people digital nomads, right? I mean, now we're going to see that that's in the new Urban Dictionary as probably the word of the year, digital nomad. So we hear about these individuals, not just in our country, but obviously that international opportunity they now have to work from anywhere. You look at countries like Costa Rica, they are now creating, in response to this, incentives. So a 12-month visa for you or your family to come live in Costa Rica, knowing that it's going to be temporary. Again, speaking to what a huge contrast from our parents, where people don't want to necessarily put down roots or have the permanency that others for so many years held on to.
Yeah, and the implications for this are just completely off the charts. If you think about it from a sociological standpoint, you talk about breaking down barriers and bringing people together. I can not only work from home, I can work on vacation in Russia. I can go, take off for a year and live in, Argentina and do my work from there and create an entirely new lifestyle. So work-life balance really has changed.
So members of the Legion are among the ranks of the digital nomads. We had an opportunity to catch up with one. Andrew, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your work and what your journey has been to find a career that fits.
Well, I just recently, after 7 years, I just recently got out of the Navy. Actually, tomorrow is my last day active duty, and I was air traffic controller in the Navy. So right now, I'm kind of like in the transition point. So the Navy provides the GI Bill, and with that comes housing. So I thought, because I already had the van at the time, because I live in a van, instead of actually using the money for rent to actually go and get a regular place that's going to cost like $1,200 for like a 1-bedroom, I can use that money almost like as like a part-time job, and then get another job on top of that and go to school. So that's where I'm kind of at this point. And then from there, I'm going to go to school to be a firefighter, so fire science.
That's so interesting. Thank you for your service, by the way, in the Navy. When you say so casually, you live in a van, how did you come to that lifestyle as being viable? And just talk about why you're comfortable with that.
Well, I guess I didn't grow up I grew up pretty much in like poverty. So I was already used to like kind of like lower conditions. Like I really didn't grow up with, for a while, we didn't even have water at our house because the well wasn't working. So I'm kind of used to like those kind of conditions already in that kind of background. And then for my hobby is ultra running. So I'm always out on the trails, always traveling to different spots where I can run, hit different mountains. And so it's more accessible and saves you a lot of money if I can go to the mountain and stay overnight at the trailhead rather than sleeping in the car or getting a hotel or something, and then the costs just go up from there. So for what I do, ultra running, always outside, even if I had an apartment, I wouldn't even really be in it. And then I met another guy in the Navy that was good with electrical, and he actually lives in a van too. And so he routed all my electrical. He's an awesome guy. So from there, I went from just like a little cooler to have an electric. And then from there, I can have like an actual fridge. And then currently, I don't have water in the van yet, but I'm actually starting to build that out as I have more free time. So, and that's honestly, people are like, oh, that's a lot of like, it's kind of hard to do that, but really it isn't, because there's always like, because right now I'm going to school and there's showers everywhere. There's even like gyms, 24/7 gyms and stuff. So once you get in the routine and get used to it and adapt to it, because you can always adapt to really anything. I mean, it's kind of just normal at that point.
It's fascinating. Before I ask a question about your hobby, ultra running, I have to ask, where is your hometown? Where did you grow up and how old are you?
My hometown is Tehachapi, California. So I guess if you don't know where that is, it's right between Palmdale and Bakersfield off the 58 where it meets in the middle. And then I am 26 years old.
It's so cool that you have found what's comfortable for you in a way that inspires other people to really simplify their lives in a lot of ways. Like you describe how you just, learn to adapt to it, and it really supports. It's more convenient to sustain your hobby. Tell us what ultra running means. What is all that about?
I guess the simplest way to put it is it's anything over a marathon, which is like 26.2 miles. And funny thing is, I've never actually ran an official marathon.
How many miles do you run a week?
It depends on training and what I'm training for, but right now it's like around 60 to 80.
Wow. Impressive.
Yeah. And then it can ramp up if like, you have bigger races, and then you're going to want to like taper down. But that's a whole nother story.
So when you travel and live out of your van, you have to have some permanency because you're going to school right now. So is that keeping you stationary? Are you parked in one place? And how do you deal with, not getting towed or kicked out?
Yeah, I gotcha. That is a little nerve-wracking at first. You kind of just like figure out spots. You don't always want to stay in one spot. Like Walmart and stuff are good spots to be during the day because there's so much traffic and people are coming and going, and they usually have like Wi-Fi and stuff. So it's a good place to stay at the day. Or like if I'm going to school during the day, I'll park by the school, but I'll never sleep by the school. I either park like right now, it'd be like by like hotels on the side streets, because this is also like, it's easier here too, because it's like it's kind of like a connection between different cities. So there's a bunch of travelers coming through in and out. So it's really not that big of an issue when people say, oh, like, where are you somebody's going to be knocking on your door. No one's knocking on your door. Just don't park in front of somebody's house or something and be doing some whack stuff, like emptying out your whole van and trying to organize in front of somebody's house. Then, yeah, you're going to draw attention to yourself. It's kind of just keep it to yourself.
Where's your home base now? Where are you going to school? Which part of the country?
I'm going to Western Colorado University, so in Gunnison, Colorado. So, and that was perfect for me because I wanted to be back in a small town because I just was in San Diego for a long time. And I'm not a big fan of the city. And now every weekend I can go hit 14,000 plus feet mountains, what they call them, like 14ers. So they're all around. They're like only like hour and a half away. So that's always been a dream of mine since I've been a kid, just come out to Colorado. So here I am.
That's so cool. Do you, well, congratulations on living out that dream, as unique and inspirational as it is for some people. And for other people, they would say, no way, no how could I do it? But so many young people are catching that feeling of, not wanting
to have a mortgage and be tied down and be in debt. So what is your advice to other people? Why should they consider a similar lifestyle?
First of all, it's you're gonna want to do it. I mean, you got to have a reason behind it.
I tell you, that's a great interview. And even though it's so different than anything before, it's still pretty mainstream, right? He has his computer, he's still doing his job. It's just the environment that's changed. But this opportunity to be remote is so fundamentally different that you can really shatter the entire paradigm. There's even, different ways that you can create a work life for yourself, a remote work life for yourself, that's even less white collar.
Yeah, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, that years ago, if you told mom and dad, hey, I have a career that involves me, couch surfing or sleeping in hostels, you might be embarrassed to, tell the friends about that at a dinner party. Now people are proud that young people especially have the courage and the creativity to take charge of their careers and carve out a unique experience all their own. Let's check out another example.
Thank you, Trevor, for joining me. Tell us a little bit about your unique lifestyle that is essentially a digital nomad in some respects.
Yeah, so a few years ago, I started traveling and working from my laptop. Did a short little experiment in the Czech Republic to see if I, liked working and traveling and could manage work while being somewhere else. And yeah, I did like a couple week little trip, and then decided after that, this is definitely what I want to do. So I came home back to Iowa, I sold all my things, got out of my lease and just packed the bag. And so for the past few years, I've just been renting out Airbnbs. I've stayed in some hostels, stay in hotels, but I move around, different country every couple weeks or couple months, other than during this weird last year and a half. Been doing this mostly full time for around 3 years, a little over 3 years. So yeah, work for myself, have a small little marketing agency called Fresh Fuel Marketing. Well, I'm just started producing some travel videos on essentialdigitalnomad.com. So where I'm sharing like what it's like to live and work in some of these places and advice for other people who would like to do the same. Because I think that with everybody working from home for the past year and a half, once things improve around the world, then a lot of people are going to be moving around all over the place and working from beaches or from different countries, and they're in the mountains, wherever they want to be. So hoping that from my experience, I can kind of share that with people.
It's so interesting. Tell us your age and what your advice would be for people who want to follow in your path.
So I'm 33 years old, and I guess my advice would just be you should do it. If you just go, do an experiment like I did, take a couple weeks and see if you actually like it and you can handle it. Because I think there's a lot of people that probably wouldn't like the way that I live necessarily. That's a lot of change. You're constantly having to figure out new things. So do an experiment to see if it's what you want. And if it is, then just do it. Someday is never going to happen unless you take a risk and give it a shot. And just remember though, if it doesn't work out, you can always go home. You can always go back. So I don't think there's as much risk as it seems when people are thinking about doing this. So just do it, give it a shot, and remember that the worst thing that happens is you just come back to where you are now.
Lift Innovate is one of the fastest growing companies in America. The technology consulting firm has a reputation for being a leader in customer success and research. For the second year in a row, Lyft has landed on the prestigious Inc. 5000 list of America's fastest growing private companies in its latest ranking. Lyft's mission is to bridge the gap between the world's best technologies and the people that use them, striving to change the way our partners view work, one innovative idea, service, and solution at a time. Thanks for staying with us. We've been talking this episode about the work-life balance. That has now shifted to the top of so many people's priority lists, whereas years ago, it was unheard of to think that you could have a conversation with your boss or an employer and say, hey, this is where I draw the line because my work-life balance has to factor in to my decision about whether I continue being a part of this company. That is a unique position that both employers and employees are finding themselves in.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I were to tell you I'm going to switch jobs because I get a hay penny more a half an hour at this new job, you'd sort of give me an odd look. You know, a hay penny, a half a penny used to be part of the vernacular, and everybody knew what that meant and understood its value, right? So definitions change over time. Words, gain meaning or lose meaning, and that's what we're seeing with work-life balance, right? Work-life balance, what we used to mean, used to just mean enough time off to go, grocery shopping or to be able to, see your kids at their recital. But today it can mean a whole new way of living, as we've seen in both of the examples, earlier in the show. Today we have more freedom than ever before, and our great-grandparents, wouldn't even think it possible, what our life and what our options are. We have literally unlimited choice without having to leave the mainstream, which was the first example we talked about today. But you know what? Freedom really isn't free, and the cost of freedom always has to be paid. And the quote that comes to mind is, with freedom comes responsibility. Right? And I think that's really important to remember now. Those are the words of Viktor Frankl, who reminded us that with our freedoms comes responsibility. And so when we think about it in terms of our context for today's show, we really can't expect to be able to live anywhere and not be responsible to our employer. We can't ask for loyalty of our employer and not be willing to reciprocate that loyalty. Once again, we talk a lot about people thinking, when they first see the show, that this is some kind of workers movement. No, this is willing to win-win, right? This is all about how do we create a win-win situation to optimize the companies of the future and create amazing success for the organizations we work at, as well as the people that work in them. So we have to have a two-way street. The problem is some people are already starting to take advantage of that. And these people will hurt the others that are trying to play by the rules. We had alluded to some stats, in the opening segment about how some people are thinking about how do they supplement their income. Other people have actually gone beyond that and literally have multiple jobs. Let me explain. This was a story from the Wall Street Journal called Double Dipping. And the headline reads, these people who work from home have a secret. They have two jobs. When the pandemic freed employees from having to report to the office, some saw the opportunity as a way to double their salary on the sly. Now that doesn't sound like a willing to win employee or a willing to win value at all, right?
No.
Because that is not being fair to the employer. You can't give your full effort when you only are working half time.
Right.
And so you can't expect the world to treat you with respect and dignity, the respect and dignity you deserve, without being willing to do the same with others. And that's what we're seeing here. And so, to be a member of the Legion of Tomorrow, to take your place amongst the heroes of the future, which we're trying to create, we must accept the responsibility of lifting up all the people involved in the effort. And the organization, that means being true to the organization as well as true to yourself. Because if we don't lift one another up, if we don't aspire to be more, then we'll never fulfill our potential to begin with. We'll never become what we could have become. I may not have explained that as well as when I first heard it. We're going to show a clip here from a man named Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He got this idea when he was a prisoner of war in World War II. He was in a concentration camp. And each day he saw, his friends go to the gas chambers, be executed, be persecuted, be beaten, every single day. And he saw people at their most raw. And he came out of that, and there's two ways that he could have gone with it, right? He could have, continued to live in the spiral of despair and continue that, or he could have done something powerful with it. And that's exactly what he did. He did something amazingly powerful. He created a whole new way of viewing the world called logotherapy that was an answer to Freud's psychoanalysis. the bottom line is, he says it's not sex that motivates people, which is what Freud says. It's not power, which is what Adler says. He says what motivates people is their will to meaning. They want to be more. They want to do more. And it's really important that we encourage people to an ideal. And let's hear how he explained it. He is awesome. I love his accent. This is talking to a college class back in the 60s.
They wish to make a lot of money. In Europe, every American student, even more every American adult, is regarded as someone who is just out to make a lot of money. Really, 16% of these students regarded their main goal and concern in life to make a lot of money. I'm quoting literally, make a lot of money. And you know what the top class, the top category, we say category, what do you say? Category was among, excuse me, but I know I am speaking a marvelous accent without the slightest English. Now, you know what the top category was? 78% of these American youngsters were concerned, as they expressed it themselves, with finding a meaning and purpose in their lives.
It's so cool that you have found inspiration in somebody like that with such an incredible story. And I love his message being so optimistic considering what he went through.
Yeah, and if there's one value that really reflects the Legion, and that is optimism, right? We have great optimism about the future, and we're just really excited we can make these choices, but our responsibility, that's our freedom, our responsibility is that we have to get involved in the conversation so we don't end up in a future that isn't what it could have been, right? We have to be thinking about that future as an ideal in order for it to achieve its potential, which is exactly what Frankl talked about. Now, Viktor Frankl did a lot in his life. I mean, his book was a seminal book. He was, involved with, creating an entirely new school of psychoanalysis, which is, far more reflective of how people view the world and probably is much more accurate. And he did so much, not the least of which is he survived, that amazing, experience, that horrible experience, the chaos and death that he experienced to become a leader of people. But there is something he sought to do that he was unable to do in his lifetime. And today, we just want to sort of tease the Legion by saying that Viktor Frankl had a dream that had to do with the idea that with freedom comes responsibility. And we as the Legion, as we start to galvanize and get into our new year, in our new year, we'll be making an effort to accomplish the goal he was never able to complete in his life. I don't want to give it all away, but let me just tell you that we've got something amazing coming that you can be a part of, a project and an activity that if we make it succeed, you will tell your grandchildren about, and hopefully they'll tell their grandchildren about it. But more on that in the new year. But once again, this was just an amazing show, seeing all the different people, creating lives for themselves on their terms. That's what it's all about.
It's exciting, and the tease is interesting. We're going to be excited to give you more details yet to come.
I'll tell you about it off air, but we can't tell you.
Yeah, right, okay. To be continued. We want you to be a part of this conversation. Like Jeff and I were talking about, this isn't about pitting an employer against an employee or vice versa. It's a win-win. Willing to win is everybody can succeed together, but in a more strategic way in terms of how you have those conversations and sort of the requirements on the job that we're all going to be empowered to not just demand, but to work with the employees or employers rather for the jobs of the future to determine. It's an exciting future for all of us, and for all of you right now who might be frustrated with your jobs, know that you're not alone in wanting something different. And at the same time, we're asking, the employers to sort of meet the challenge of working with all of us to have that conversation so that everybody succeeds in the end.
Win-win.
Join the Legion. willingtowin.org is our website. It's willing, written out the number 2, win.org, and we'll see you soon.
See you next time.